What if the story of wealth you've been taught your entire life is incomplete, not just slightly inaccurate, but intentionally rewritten to hide the true origins of economic power? What if the richest individuals and institutions in history didn't gain influence through hard work or innovation alone, but through a centuries-old mechanism designed to quietly transfer control from nations to private hands? And here's the real mystery. Why do the same patterns of rising wealth concentration, financial dominance, and economic manipulation keep repeating, regardless of who appears to be in charge? Before we uncover the system behind this hidden influence, before we reveal the names and forces that shape the modern economy, we need to understand one crucial fact: wealth has never been just about money. It has always been about control. And the moment you see how that control evolved, you'll never look at financial history the same way again. Welcome to Dollaroid. This is the untold story of wealth and economic influence, a story that begins not with modern billionaires or tech giants, but with medieval bankers in Italian city-states. Like Florence and Venice, where early families such as the Medici discovered a revolutionary financial tool: the ability to create influence without owning physical assets. They controlled credit, and in doing so, controlled kings, wars, and entire economies. The cause and effect principle was simple. Rulers needed money to finance armies and expansion. Bankers provided loans, and in return gained political leverage. The more debt a ruler owed, the more power the lenders held. This was the origin shift from land-based wealth to credit-based influence. Over time, this system evolved. The rise phase began in the 17th century with the creation of central banks like the Bank of England, formed after the British government borrowed heavily from private financiers. In exchange, those financiers were granted unprecedented authority to issue currency backed by government debt. Cause and effect. Governments became dependent on debt issuance. Currency became tied to borrowing, and wealth influence moved further into private hands. By the 19th and 20th centuries, industrialists and financial magnates, figures like J.P. Morgan in the United States and the Rothschild networks across Europe, leveraged this system to shape markets, industries, and national policies. Their power didn't come merely from wealth, but from their role in stabilizing or destabilizing entire economies. When J.P. Morgan personally intervened to stop the panic of 1907, it wasn't government action that saved the financial system. It was private capital deciding who survived and who failed. The breaking point came in 1971 when the United States abandoned the gold standard, severing currency from physical backing for the first time in modern history. Cause and effect. Money became purely symbolic, created through debt, controlled by central institutions, and influenced by private financial actors. From that moment forward, wealth creation accelerated dramatically for those who understood the system. Asset owners saw exponential gains, while wage earners experienced stagnation. This structural change created the conditions for unprecedented wealth concentration. Today, the top 1% controls more than half of global wealth, and the top 0.1% controls as much as the bottom 90% combined. But here's the twist. Even as wealth inequality became more visible, the mechanisms behind economic influence grew more hidden. Financial instruments like derivatives, leveraged buyouts, and shadow banking allowed institutions to control trillions without public scrutiny. The fallout of this system became evident during the 2008 financial crisis. Risky mortgage-backed securities collapsed, wiping out household wealth. Yet the institutions responsible were bailed out. Cause and effect. Governments rescued the financial elite to preserve the system, reinforcing private influence while ordinary citizens paid the price through recession, unemployment, and lost savings. Many believed reforms like Dodd-Frank would fix the system, but those efforts largely failed. Regulations were weakened, loopholes expanded, and financial innovation continued to outpace oversight. Central banks responded by injecting trillions into markets through quantitative easing, inflating asset prices and further enriching those who already owned them. The failed fixes created a new era where markets depend heavily on central bank decisions, making economic influence even more concentrated. Now, we see modern parallels that reveal the repeating pattern. Just as medieval bankers controlled kings through debt, modern institutions control governments through bond markets. When a nation's borrowing costs rise, its policies shift to satisfy creditors. Just as industrialists shaped economies through infrastructure and industry, today's tech giants shaped them through data and platforms. And just as financiers profited from crisis in the past, modern hedge funds and asset managers gained massively during the pandemic. The shocking data? During the 2020 to 2021 period, global billionaire wealth increased by over $5 trillion, the largest surge in modern history, while millions lost jobs and small businesses collapsed.
Ow.
Once again, cause and effect. Economic crises redistribute wealth upward when financial systems prioritize capital markets over real economies. We also see the emergence of new influence centers. Asset managers like BlackRock and Vanguard collectively control ownership stakes in the majority of major global companies, giving them silent power over corporate governance, labor policies, and market direction. Analysts estimate that a handful of institutions now influence more than $25 trillion in global assets. This consolidation echoes the same pattern. Wealth centralizes, influence expands, public awareness lags behind. Meanwhile, ordinary individuals find themselves increasingly dependent on systems they neither control nor fully understand. The repeating narrative throughout history is clear. Wealth concentrates through financial mechanisms. Crises accelerate consolidation, reforms fail or backfire. And influence shifts further from public institutions to private entities. The biggest illusion is that economic power changes hands through elections or policy alone. In reality, the underlying financial architecture remains remarkably consistent across centuries. Now, as we approach a new era defined by digital currencies, algorithmic trading, and global financial interdependence, the stakes are higher than ever. Central bank digital currencies may increase institutional control, while decentralized cryptocurrencies challenge it, creating a new battleground for influence. The question is not whether wealth will continue to shape economic power. It's who will control the next stage of that transformation. As we close, here are the 3 key takeaways. First, wealth is not just money. It is the ability to influence institutions, policies, and economic structures through control of debt and financial systems.
Second,
Every major shift in wealth power follows a repeating cause and effect cycle: debt dependence, crisis, consolidation, failed reform, and increased private influence. Third, modern financial influence is more concentrated and less visible than ever, with a handful of institutions controlling unprecedented global wealth. And here's the warning. The next major economic transition could further entrench this influence, especially if digital financial systems become centralized under institutional control. The real question is whether society will recognize the pattern in time to challenge it, or whether history will repeat, once again with even greater consequences. If you want to continue uncovering the hidden forces shaping wealth, power, and economic history, make sure you like, subscribe, and join me again as we reveal the systems that influence your financial future without you ever noticing.